Wednesday, March 12th. You are watching Wisconsin's weather experts here on Fox Local. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a very, very busy program ahead of us today, and it's another beautiful day out there.
It is. You know, we're going to continue to talk about warming temperatures for us, but also locally, fantastic weather to get outside. We're kind of thinking spring as we sprung our clocks forward.
That's
true. It feels like spring is here.
And of course, in this transitional period, you know, you get these days where you get the little taste of what's to come, right? We've had 60-something, temperatures. We've got some more coming our way as well, and it just gets you excited about the days ahead. But the days ahead also mean some stormy weather.
Yes.
And we may not be done with wintry weather either. Coming up, we're going to look back to the early 90s for what they called the storm of the century back then, and that was a wintry mess on this date back in 1993. So stick around for some vintage video of that. But let's jump in. Let's take a look at what's going on here in the bigger picture.
Bigger picture, again, warmer temperatures as we are going to look at things across the country. And again, that's going to deal with temperatures right now for highs today in the 80s and 70s, heading down to the Gulf Coast. Yes, we are continuing to track most of the warmth in the Mississippi River Valley down to the Gulf and to the southeast. Notice where some of that cool air or cooler temperatures are still sitting. That's going to be in the Pacific Northwest and West Coast, where an active storm system is sitting right now. Now, we are going to talk about the storm systems coming up, but notice these warmer colors. That's going to be warmer temperatures still looking to sit over the Great Plains, the South, and yes, that is going to include the Midwest for Wisconsin. This will be heading from Wednesday into Thursday and Friday. So still favored for a big chunk of the United States to have above average temperatures, and with warmer temperatures, that also could mean some storms on the way, which we're going to break down momentarily. Once those storms move through by the weekend, we are going to be talking about a round of some more seasonable air pushing back into the Midwest, so we more have a roller coaster type pattern on the way for us through the upcoming days. Temperature change right now, we'll take a look at this. While we are sitting very similar to what we had yesterday at this hour, we are really seeing that warmth increase across northern portions of the state, and especially the red colors pushing into Minnesota and in the Great Plains. That's where the temperatures are a lot warmer. So the warmer air off to our west and southwest, that's where we're going to bring that in later on today. So our highs for today are projected to be in the 50s, possibly close to the 60s. For western Wisconsin, but notice by the lake, the 40s look to be around all the way again from Chicago up to portions of Door County. The reason why, it all has to do with that cooler by the lake term we constantly talk about, especially when we get into the summer months, of winds coming off of the lake. When our waters are overall cooler this time of year, that then can cool the temperatures near the surface. So cooler by the lake is what we're expected for today. About 10 degrees cooler, in fact, 40s lakeside, 50s and almost 60s further inland. Take a look as we head into Thursday. It's the similar forecast, except even warmer. We're still maintaining those cooler by the lake effect with 40s and even some 50s lakeside, but inland, that's where we start to see the warming temperatures into the 60s, low to upper 60s. And as we push into Friday, we could see a big portion of Wisconsin in the 70s, while areas closer to the lake and further north could be sitting in the upper 50s and low 60s. So this is going to put many areas across the state about 30 degrees or warmer for this time of year, unseasonably warm. But with that warmth, it is going to come an unsettling pattern, unfortunately. Right now, we don't have much going on across the Midwest, but we are watching two stronger low pressure systems that are developing and impacting the South and West Coast. The West Coast is going to have more impacts with that system for high winds. We're also talking about heavy snow in northern portions of California and the Sierra Nevada mountains, and rain and flooding in southern portions of the state. In the south, we're talking about this developing low pressure system that's strengthening, also bringing high winds. But because it's going to be drier in this area, we're talking about an extended area for an elevated fire risk. Strong storms also associated with this, again, closer to the Gulf as it's going to tap into some of that moisture. That could spark off some stronger storms there in the upcoming days. So this is where we have an expanded area of watches and warnings. Again, some of these more brown colors and pinks, that's going to resemble where the higher winds and fire risks are. But when we start incorporating some of these purples and pinks further off to the southwest and west coast, that's where we're going to be talking about the impact of winds and heavy snow. That storm system just off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, that is going to bring, again, a lot of flooding. But in the mountains, we could be talking 1 to 3 feet of snow. So hazardous travel there. And we'll have to, again, watch central and southern portions of California as they could be dealing with higher rates of rain moving in. And with areas that unfortunately dealt with those wildfires, that's where we could be dealing with some mudslides as well as flooding in those burn scar zones. Heading into the south, though, looks calm right now, but notice this little weak development near the panhandle of Texas. That's associated with that secondary low pressure system, and we'll have to watch this closely. That could develop some storms in the upcoming hours. So for today, that could put portions of the south under a risk for severe weather, especially for large hail and damaging winds. Notice as we extend that severe weather threat, though, forward Thursday, we're going to be watching for the potential of some supercell development, especially in the south, heading closer to Alabama, and then a wide area or wide swath for potential of severe weather is going to stretch from the Gulf Coast all the way up to the Midwest. This is what can impact Wisconsin as we are heading into the end of the week from Friday into early Saturday. Now, while we're on the northern tier of this, it's not necessarily meaning that we are going to see severe weather, but it's that we have the potential. The ingredients are lining up a little more so that especially south central and southwestern portions of the state could be dealing with some of the stronger storms when this system comes in. So let's time this out right now. Again, as we look at our exclusive Fox model, most of Friday during the day is going to be great. The winds will start to pick up through the day, but remember, we're talking about those 60s and 70s in the forecast, but it's not going to be until the evening hours. We're talking 9 o'clock as it looks right now, that will be pushing in and again strengthening further southwest. As this moves closer to the lakefront around the midnight time frame on Friday, we're going to have to monitor those storms closely. They still, again, could be packing a punch with heavy rain, of course, thunder, lightning, and possibly some stronger winds. But because we have winds coming off of the lake, that actually can inhibit those storms from maintaining their strength. So they actually can end up weakening as they move closer to the lake, which could benefit us and help a lot of those storms not be severe. Again, keep in mind, we're still several days out, but this is something that we've been tracking since the weekend. And when we see these patterns, or at least the Storm Prediction Center issue the probability of severe weather a week in advance, that means there's a good likelihood that we are going to have a big system with this. So that, again, is going to stick with us with the possibility of a few light showers, even a couple rumbles of thunder early Saturday. But at least here locally, that threat is going to be on the minimum end. We're really going to have to watch, again, the Great Plains into the Arklatex area. That's where we could have a linear storm system, and within that, damaging winds, also dealing with these quick spin-up tornadoes, are very favorable as this continues to drive through Friday night into Saturday. So the downfall of this is a lot of areas are looking to be impacted as we head into that sunset time frame, which typically is when we can see our severe storms perk up. But even if we do have severe weather heading past sunset and it gets dark out, this is when we have to start thinking of being weather ready as we see storms move in into the nighttime hours for the days ahead. So a lot to track again as we move through the upcoming days. Really, the warmth is going to be the first, but then we're talking about the chance for storms again, not only here locally, but this is going to continue to spread further south and impact areas near Alabama and Mississippi heading into the weekend. So a multi-day event is looking to have, unfortunately, some not great terms in terms of severe weather. But again, severe weather can happen any time of the year, so we're keeping an eye on things locally as well as nationwide when the system passes through. What we're going to continue to talk about, though, is, again, while we have the sunshine right now, things weren't so sunny about a century ago. Would you say so, Rob?
Well, no, we're not going to go quite that far back. not quite back to 1925, but 1993 may seem that long ago to you.
Well, yeah.
But yes, we're going to go way back, and if you look at some retro video here from 1993. We do have even older things to talk about, though, and that's back in the 1800s. But we'll get to that in a second. I want to bring up this because this started happening today and lasted for about 3 days. They called it the storm of the century back in 1993. It started on March 12th, went through to about the 15th. At the peak of this storm, it stretched from Canada to Central America. So this is definitely an anomaly for size, all the way out to the eastern states. Even Cuba was impacted by this. It was formed when 3 separate weather patterns kind of combined in the Gulf and then started to move to the north. 3 days of heavy snowfall, rough seas, blizzards, coastal flooding, tornadoes, and then, of course, bitter cold temperatures in some cases, too. The Coast Guard had some 200 and something vessels deployed at one point for rescues. They said that some of their ships were being tossed around like they were in a big washing machine. They had a 200-foot freighter sunk just about 70 miles off of Fort Myers, Florida. So you can see some of the video from back in the day. And as I was looking for some of this video back in the day, I stumbled on to what we call a package or a story from our New York station that covered the wide-ranging impacts of this system. So let's take a look back in time to that now.
Of course, we weren't the only ones affected by the storm of the century. As it roared up the eastern seaboard, it left 107 people dead. The dangerous winter storm left uprooted trees from Orlando, Florida to Hyannis, Massachusetts. It dumped a record 24 inches of snow on Pittsburgh, turned highways into one big parking lot, and forced motorists off the road in Philadelphia. In Washington, people found creative ways to get around under adverse conditions. 8 inches there. The snow didn't stop the president from attending church. It was something people in Atlanta don't see very much of, but it's something folks in Buffalo know all too well. They got 18 inches of snow.
Yeah, I mean, 1.5 feet of snow in Buffalo is still a big deal. They're just a little more used to it than the folks down in Atlanta, that's for sure. Fascinating to see that video from 93, but we go even deeper now.
Now, more than a century
ago. 130 years?
Can you believe it? We have finally solved the mystery here.
Yeah,
a sunken ship.
I mean, the Great Lakes have tons of shipwrecks, which divers love. This one was just recently announced, and this one does go quite a ways back. It's called the Western Reserve. They found it in 600 feet of water. Yeah, just off of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, just northwest of Whitefish Point. It was a 300-foot freighter. It sunk in 1892 after the hull cracked during a gale storm, so a windstorm there. Explorers from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society used sonar to pinpoint the location just this past July. So it was a while back they actually found it, but the discovery was then announced this past weekend at the annual Ghost Ships Festival just up the road from us in Manitowoc.
Oh, neat.
Look at how, like, it almost looks so perfectly preserved.
I know, and really the clarity of the water is what defines all those details. I mean, even you can see a lot of that work on the bell there, and even all those, wood strands on that mast. So it is spectacular. Of course, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different shipwrecks we have in the Great Lakes. Even in Door County, you can do some kayak tours and see them.
Go see the shipwrecks, and the depth of that, too, 600 feet. That was, astonishing to our wake-up cast and crew. They were like, it goes that deep? Lake Superior? Lake Superior actually goes to over 1,300 feet at its deepest, and I think it's closer to like 800-900 for Lake Michigan. So the Great Lakes are very deep lakes.
Yeah, you just don't really think about it.
No, right. But people that have never seen the Great Lakes, like our meteorologist Holly, when she came for her interview back in the day, were like, that's ocean. A lake? I mean, I know it looks like a sea or an ocean, but it is fresh water.
Well, I'm very grateful, though, that we don't have some of those mysterious creatures in the depths, though, here. Or maybe we do, and we just don't know it yet.
Never say never. The Great Lakes version of Loch Ness may be. It may be out there.
One day, if you see
hopefully no mysteries when we come back. You're watching the Wisconsin Weather Experts right here on Fox 6 News. Stick around.
Well, welcome back to the Wisconsin Weather Experts. We've been covering a lot of information from active weather coming up this week, and thinking about, heading into March. Severe weather season is going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, I mean, we can technically get severe weather, as you pointed out, any time of the year. But as we get into spring, things tend to become more active. And part of that active weather season is tornadoes. And of course, we want to get an update from Chief Meteorologist Tom Wachs on our tornado situation.
Well, let's take a look back at our 2024 severe weather season, both from southeastern Wisconsin to the state of Wisconsin and also across the country. If you recall, it was an active one. We had 27 tornado warnings just in southeastern Wisconsin when the annual average is 5 tornado warnings. What is so interesting is we had so many tornado warnings, in part because we had several lines of thunderstorms come through with little areas of rotation along them, and that caused a bunch of tornado warnings to be issued in May and June. The last tornado warning in southeastern Wisconsin was June 23rd. We also had a lot of severe thunderstorm warnings, over 80, had several flash flood warnings in high rivers. The last severe thunderstorm warning was on August the 27th. So that, again, that's during the 2024 season. Statewide, we had quite a few tornadoes. In fact, 45 in total, 3 EF2. Thankfully, they were on the weaker side. Now, the tornado damage scale goes from 0 on the weak side to 5 on the very strong side. Most of these were weak. We had 3 EF2 tornadoes, 28 EF1s, 14 EF0s across the state. Southeastern Wisconsin saw 10 of those 45 tornadoes, and the statewide annual average is 23. We also had our first February tornado warning and first February tornado ever on record in the state of Wisconsin as well, if you recall those February tornadoes. So it was a very active season, but it also largely came to an abrupt end after June, at least from a tornado standpoint. Well, now let's talk about across the country, because it was very active nationwide as well, not just in Wisconsin. It was a very active April and May across the country. In fact, the second most tornadoes on record, and that goes back to 1950. There were almost 1,800 tornadoes reported across the country. Now, this is really interesting. There were several tropical cyclone-induced tornadoes this year as well. 6 EF3 tornadoes from tropical cyclones, and those are pretty strong in general, let alone coming from a tropical system. Now, before this point, there were only 5 EF3 tropical cyclone-induced tornadoes reported since 1995. So that gives you an idea of how rare these types of tornadoes are, but there were a lot, and there was a big batch of them in Florida in association with a tropical system there as well. Several state tornado records were broken, and we also had the most significant wind reports on record across the country. So that would be winds of about 75 miles an hour or greater, so hurricane force winds in association typically with lines of thunderstorms, but it can also happen with cellular storms as well. There were 54 tornado deaths, which is actually below average given the number of tornadoes that happened, but obviously that's still 54 too many. But what that is also telling us, given the amount of tornadoes across the country, the alert system is working. And it really makes me emphasize again, as we always do every spring, make sure to have your phone's emergency alerts turned on. Those have really been lifesavers when you get those automatic alerts, what we call WEA alerts, W-E-A alerts. Turn those on. It should be near where Amber Alerts are located. I'm telling you, those can be lifesavers, and I really think that it's causing more awareness now when tornado warnings are issued, and it is causing more people to take shelter, and that's what we ask when it comes to severe weather, right, is to heed the warning and take shelter, because it really will save lives.
Really good advice there from Tom. And, you know, last year in February, we had our historic tornadoes, first ever recorded. So it really is just good to be prepared at any time of the year. And speaking of being prepared and being maybe caught off guard, we had a woman who was stuck in a car.
This video is unbelievable. So she gets trapped in her car during a tornado in Florida, which Florida has been very active. Take a look at the video. She was on a road near Longwood, apparently, which was just north of Orlando, in an EF2 tornado touchdown on Monday. So let's take a look at that.
Dios mío. Dios mío.
All right, so she posted that to social media. Of course, you can see the tornado shaking the vehicle, debris slamming into her windshield. Thankfully, she wasn't hurt. Of course, the tornadoes, busy this time of year for sure, and they've had some stronger ones in Florida just recently. When you're in your car like that, I mean, ideally, you get out ahead of this and you know what the day
Right.
is like and you avoid this kind of travel. But depending on the circumstance, sometimes the car is about the only spot you've got.
Yeah, yeah. And really, you know, a lot of times too, like in this video, you can't even really see it. So tornadoes can easily be rain wrapped. If you don't have a shelter, really your car can be the best thing. The only thing you got to keep in mind is cars obviously are higher off the ground. So sometimes they can be turned or lofted in the air, but it's better than being outside. You see all that debris flying. Sometimes all it takes is a little piece of wood that can go through your own body. So the car may be the better option in some cases.
Right. And ideally, she shouldn't be spending time putting that on social media. She should be covering her head, getting low, strapping in, because you're right, if the vehicle gets picked up and thrown, you want to be strapped in. You want to protect your head as much as possible. There's a old meteorologist told me once, it's not that the wind is blowing, it's what the wind is blowing. And if it's blowing, like you said, even small pieces of debris could become deadly. All right, we will be back. We have more Wisconsin weather experts, so much more coming up. We answer some questions. Lisa's got some pictures. Stick around. All right, welcome back. You are watching the Wisconsin Weather Experts right here on Fox Local, and we've been talking a lot about severe weather, and we did get a really good viewer question. So Lily in Neshota asked us, what percentage chance of a tornado, 2%, 5%, 10%, which is some of the typically published numbers, what she wants to know, should she worry about? So the short answer is yes. Any percent you should be worried about, because even at 1% or 2%, that seems like a very low chance, but there is a chance. And if you're out there and you are, of course, that lady in the car, that could have been a 2% or 5% day. That seems low, but it doesn't take much for a tornado to spin up. And as we were saying before we came into this segment, even on a 0% day, that could change.
And we have had, situations where we've had 0% chance. But, the lake impacts things. We've had tornadoes that can occur even when it's not in the forecast. So just being prepared at any time we have storms is going to be your best bet to stay safe. So that's going to be super, super important. Again, severe weather season is going to be here before you know it.
So make sure you download the app. Of course, get Fox Local. Take that with you. There'll be push alerts on there as well. So any percent, and even some days on the 0%, be very weather aware. Speaking of, if you have a question, there's that little box in the corner. Don't forget, you can send in your questions just by scanning the QR code.
And I had a lot of questions recently. I did a visit, actually, to a senior home. And we were talking about severe weather as well and what you can do to be prepared. I had a nice picture of some of my visits there.
Get a little selfie with the gang?
I did not get a full selfie. It was this was like a 2-hour presentation. So 3 Pillars Senior Living Home Communities in Dousman, thank you for having me out. But we had a very large group of seniors. We talked about, again, a variety of things of how the business works, how we have teamwork here as a station, and again, how our winters are changing, how our severe weather seasons are changing, because Tornado Alley is actually shifting eastward, and that could mean more storms here locally in Wisconsin. So as we head into storm season or are thinking about it, we always try to find ways of how to prepare and how to just refresh yourself, your memory of what to do if you're in a situation, whether that being outside, if you're playing, or inside. One of the things I think that they thought maybe was most impactful was when you're outside and you hear the sirens, then you get inside. But if you're inside and you're relying on those sirens, they're actually not designed for that.
True, yeah. I mean, and now we have, of course, phone technology, which is also helpful for warning, whether you're inside or outside. But the best thing, of course, is preparation.
Yes.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And, of course, we've been talking about all different types of tornadoes lately. This is something that's very fascinating to me. It's a lava-nado?
I have personally never seen a video of this, but this happened in Kilauea Volcano. It was in Hawaii's Volcano National Park. This happened last week. It's a combination of gas and lava being sucked into the air and creates what's looked to be a fiery funnel cloud. Again, definitely you don't want to be by this because it is sending some liquid hot magma into the air.
So it's a very long zoom lens to take this video for Fox Weather.
600 feet in the air, though. Can you believe that? We're talking about the depth of 600 feet that ship was under.
Sure, this is 6 the other way.
Other way, yeah. So definitely kind of interesting to watch. It can happen, but because we normally are not watching tornadoes as much, or not tornadoes, we're not watching volcanoes as much here across the nation, we don't see it as often. But a cool thing to have.
Well, I guess it's the exact same scenario. You've got, heat and making for that lift, and then you've got some rotation. A lava-nado is born.
Think we can get sharknadoes maybe?
We've got lots of stuff. We have the dust-nados, we've got the dust storms, we've got the hay dust storms. It doesn't really matter what they are. You got to be careful around them. Don't be too careful around us. Come back tomorrow, same time.